Is back into it in Chester. Here's El Senior. Yes! Yes!
The center back, Jacob Glesnes.
He's going for it.
Yes! Oh, my goal! What a goal!
And that will do it! One of the best comebacks in recent years. 3 unanswered by the Union. And they go into the Gold Cup break, winning it 3-2.
Hello and welcome to the Free Kick Podcast. My name is Todd. And 5 games in, the Philadelphia Union are still in first place in the Eastern Conference with 4 wins, 1 draw, and 0 losses. The Union are continuing their best start in MLS history. While they are second in the Supporters Shield standings, only to LAFC, who have a +9 goal differential to the Union's +7. But look, we don't need fans around MLS. We don't need the MLS experts hyping up the Union because we all know that the Union play best when they're the underdogs. And I think 4 years into the Ernst Tanner tenure of being the sporting director, I think fans around MLS, teams around MLS, they know how the Union want to play. 4 straight games with a victory, 4 straight games of Daniel Gazdag scoring a goal. I mean, I did not see this coming. I don't know how many of you guys saw this coming. I know looking on Union Twitter this morning, people were like, oh, I don't want to hype it up and say this is the best Union team ever. I don't want to say that this is blah, blah, blah. I don't want to jinx it. But there is no jinxing this team, in my opinion. Like, we should be proud. We should be talking about how good this team is playing. And I know MLSsoccer.com last week, in their weekly rankings, they put the Union as their number 1 team in their MLS standings, but yet they're still not talking about Daniel Gazdag in their MVP leaders, which is fine, right? We don't need them giving the Union coverage. We know what this team is, and yeah, it might hurt and everything that we want people talking about this team, but this team always plays well when the pressure of the spotlight isn't on them. And yeah, of course, if the Philadelphia Union continue to play as well as they've started the season, then the spotlight would definitely be on them. And I'm sure probably during this week, we'll hear a lot of talk about the Union. And we know we have a tough game this coming week against the Columbus Crew on Saturday, who sit in 5th place in the Eastern Conference. But we're not going to talk about that game. Obviously, we'll wait until sometime this week and preview that game. But it's just unbelievable. You go ahead and look. Daniel Gazag's tied for the second most goals in MLS with 4. Brandon Vasquez for Cincinnati has 5 goals, leading MLS with those 5 goals. I don't know how many of you guys paid attention to that Cincinnati versus Montreal game. A crazy, crazy game yesterday, which, Cincinnati were up twice in that game. They blew the lead twice. They were up 1-0, and then they were up 2-1. And then they go into halftime losing 3-2 to Montreal, and they wound up losing this game 4-3. I mean, crazy emotions that Cincinnati fans have to be feeling after they get 2 straight wins. Now they have 2 straight losses. But, yeah, what a crazy, crazy, crazy start of the season it is been for the Philadelphia Union. And we'll talk about the game against Charlotte. We'll talk about what players impressed me. We'll talk about the goals. We'll talk about Julian, Carranza, Kai Wagner, Jim Curtin talking to the media after the game. Talk about why Ali Bedoya wasn't playing, why Sergio Santos got subbed off. Yeah, we'll talk about all that good stuff. But before we do all that, we're going to go straight into the news. Which is not a lot at all. So the only thing I want to mention in the news department for MLS is Lucas Zelarayan for the Columbus Crew has won MLS's March Player of the Month. Tied for the league lead with 4 goals through the month of March. Zelarayan leads MLS with 6 goals created and has helped lead the Crew to their unbeaten run in March of 2-0-2. But yesterday, that unbeaten mark came to an end as they lost 1-0 to Nashville at home. And now they're going to come into Subaru Park. And like I said, we'll talk about that game later on this week. But Lucas Zelarayan, we know how good of a player he is. He's Columbus's best player. And you can make an argument that he's the best 10 in MLS. And I'm here for it if you want to say he's better than Daniel Gazdag, if you want to say that he's better than Emmanuel Reynoso of Minnesota. I'll definitely hear your argument. He's a fantastic player, especially on set pieces. You see all the free kicks that he scores. The only thing I think that hurts Columbus is they don't really have that deadly number 9. Zardes looks like he's out of the mix there in Columbus, where they went with Miguel Berry as the number 9. Definitely not a household name in MLS, but he's been playing a lot better than Zardes has this season for Columbus. And I know there's been talks, will Columbus trade him? You look at a team like the Colorado Rapids, who could use a number 9. That trade makes sense. And I know we've seen some writers around MLS say that Columbus are open to a trade for him. But yeah, I feel like if Lucas Zelarayan had a striker that could put away the chances that he's creating, how many more assists would he have for Columbus this season? He'd have a ton. He's definitely a special player, and he's definitely a player that can change a game on his own. And he's a player that all of us Union fans will be watching closely next week. But again, don't want to talk too much about that. And look, and Daniel Gazdag, I don't believe was up for voting for March Player of the Month. And that's fine. Like I said in the intro, we don't need MLS writers talking about this team. Just let the Union continue to prove fans around MLS wrong, teams around MLS wrong, writers for MLSsoccer.com wrong, and it's fine, right? The Union are doing just fine without all the accolades. And I know Jim Curtin talks about, when the accolades start coming for the players, it's a team thing. It's not just a one-player thing, and that's fine and everything. I agree with that statement. But look, I'm sure these players would much rather win MLS Cup, U.S. Open Cup, the Supporters Shield than winning individual awards. Yeah, the individual awards are nice, but at the end of the day, these players want to win trophies, and we know how close they were last season to getting into the MLS Cup final against Portland. But that darn curved. And the Union, I mean, if you want to talk about motivation, that's the greatest motivation you can have when you had 11 starters, 11 players out of that game against New York City. And yeah, they've set the MLS season on fire. The best start ever for the Union in team history. So that's everything I want to talk about for the MLS news. Like I said, not a ton to talk about there, but let's go ahead and talk about the Union's match versus Charlotte, which we all know ended 2-0 to the Union. And like I said in the intro, you guys all know this, 4 straight wins for the Union, only their 3rd time in team history, which they did that in 2017 and 2018. We see Daniel Gazdag scoring 4 straight games, which the only other player that has done that in team history was Jack McInerney in 2012. It's a ton of time passed since we've had a player scoring 4 straight games. Daniel Gazdag, could he score 5 straight against Columbus? Yeah, with the form that he's in, I don't see why not. But again, don't want to talk about that Columbus game yet. And this is a game that could have started. It couldn't have started any better, in my opinion. Julian Carranza getting his first Union goal in the 5th minute with a great combination of play from Kai Wagner and Sergio Santos. There was a ton of questions about will Mikael Uhre start, will he come off the bench, and Jim decided to bring him off the bench. During the week in Jim's weekly press conference, he was asked about that. He was asked about, how's he looking in training, and Jim told us he was training since last Friday, the day before they took on. Actually, no, sorry. Last Friday when the international break was happening. And he said he's looked great in practice. And he was like, he's one of our best players, and the temptation's always there to start him. But, he's definitely going to have a role to play against Charlotte. And yeah, he came off the bench for about 30 minutes. Could have scored a goal, and we'll talk about that, I'm sure, here and a little bit later. But look, the partnership between Sergio Santos and Julian Carranza, it's been something really special to watch. And I go back to the game against Cincinnati in preseason, where Julian, Carranza, and Sergio Santos started that game because Mikel couldn't get into the country because of trying to get his visa. Corey Burke left the country to go get his green card, which he eventually got, we all know. And so that means that the Philadelphia Union, after all the talk of, okay, well, we have 4 strikers, they were only down to 2 because Corey Burke left the country and Mikel couldn't get in the country. And Julian and Sergio played a lot during the preseason, and we saw them. The same exact goal that they scored against Charlotte last night is the same exact goal that they scored against Cincinnati in the preseason, where Kai Wagner plays a long ball over the top. Sergio Santos runs into the box, crosses it in to Julian Carranza, who's running from the right side of the goal, and hits the ball in the back of the net. And yeah, we'll break down exactly what happened during that goal last night, and we'll talk about the Daniel Gazdag goal here in a minute or two. But look, Kai Wagner's passing ability, Sergio's speed, we see it at least once a game. And we saw it a little bit later on in the game too. Instead of, I think it was Kai Wagner, but it could have been Jack Elliott playing the ball over the top. Instead of playing Sergio Santos out into the channel, we see the Union play the ball straight down the middle over the top of the midfield and the 2 center backs, where Sergio Santos looks like he's going to be on a one-on-one position against Kalina, the goalkeeper for Charlotte. But Kalina reads the play well, comes out of his box and clears the ball. But the work rates from every single player were super impressive on the night, especially the 2 strikers who made it difficult for Charlotte to play out of the back. I thought Quinn Sullivan played excellent last night, stepping in for Bedoya, who Jim Curtin said after the game tweaked his knee on the very last play on the last day of practice. Jim doesn't believe it's anything serious, but they kept him out for precautionary reasoning. And Quinn Sullivan, I mean, he was great. You saw the energy that he brought. You saw the interchange between him, Nate Harriel, and Daniel Gazdag on the right side. Yeah, I thought it was excellent on the night. A lot of fast passing, a lot of give and goes, which seemed to confuse Charlotte on the night. After Quinn Sullivan had a big showing with the U20s during the international break where he scored a hat trick. I know Paxton Aronson got on the goal scoring list down in Argentina. Jack McGlynn got on the goal scoring list. I think the Union scored like 6 out of 7 of the goals, something like that down in Argentina. And it's very, very possible, right, that we see in 2026 most of the national team starting 11 be Union Academy players, be Union products. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. The more and more game time these young players get, the more eyes are going to be on them, and they'll eventually be sold to Europe. And we've talked a lot over the last couple years on this podcast about how it sucks losing our best players, how it sucks selling Brendan Aronson, Mark McKenzie, but the end goal for those guys was never to stay in MLS for the rest of their careers. It was to go to Europe to test themselves. And we saw what Brendan Aronson did in the Champions League for Salzburg, 2 assists in 2 games against Bayern Munich. Mark McKenzie's not having the run of games that he wants right now for Genk, but when he has played, he's looked promising. I think on his podcast, Orange Slices, he said that he was dealing with an illness that isn't COVID. I think he said he had a cold or something, so it kept him out of a game a few weeks ago, which, now he's going to have to fight for his starting spot back into the 11 for Genk. But the end goal for all these players, not just the homegrown players, but all the young European players, is to get back to Europe, to play for a top team in Europe where they can hopefully break into the national team or just continue to play for the national team. And the more and more that Quinn Sullivan, Jack McGlynn, Paxton Aronson get playing time, we'll eventually see these guys sold to Europe. So we just got to enjoy them while we have them. But yeah, just super impressed with how Quinn Sullivan stepped in and just the chemistry that you saw him earlier on build between, like I said, Nate and Daniel Gazdag. I look at the midfield, not only just Quinn Sullivan and Daniel Gazdag, I look at Leon Flock and especially Jose Martinez. Just the way that they protected the back line all last night, they were excellent, just helping out defensively like they always are. But last night, I think, was both of those guys' best games of the season defensively for the Union. Especially Leon Flock. I think you look at his offensive numbers last night. I think last night was probably Leon Flock's best game so far this season for the Union. But Jose Martinez, that guy just continues to get better and better each and every single game for the Union. And we'll highlight him here in a little bit again. But yeah, the Union were just excellent. And you go ahead and you look. The only time that Charlotte really troubled the Union last night, it came in the first half with Ben Bender, who should have scored, in my opinion. He slowed down his run in the box, which left him unmarked, and he was able to take a touch and set it up on his favorite left foot, which instead of trying to place that ball, he hit it with pace, and it hit the side netting. And you got to give credit to Jacob Glesnes for making the angle as tight as possible for Ben to shoot. But yeah, that was the only moment in that game that scared me from Charlotte. And you got to give just credit to Kalina for keeping Charlotte into this game. He had 4 saves on the night, and I know we had that huge blunder, which we'll for sure talk about here later. But other than that, I mean, nothing really impressed me for Charlotte. It was funny too, reading on social media how a lot of Charlotte fans thought that they were going to come over here and just stomp all over the Union, which is weird because you look, the Union have only lost 6 times in MLS play at Subaru Park since 2019 at home. So for their fans to think that they're going to come into Subaru Park and beat the Union, I don't know what those guys were smoking. I don't know why they were so confident. You guys beat a Cincinnati team, like Jess said last episode, where if Cincinnati could have finished their chances, that game would have been a lot different than the 2-0 victory that Charlotte had. And then you play the New England Revolution, who were coming off of a Champions League game after traveling down to Mexico. They were tired, and a win's a win, right? Don't make excuses. They beat 2 teams, and they had some momentum going for them. But for their fans to say that they're going to come into Subaru Park and destroy the Union, I thought that was really, really laughable. You go ahead and look too, right? I know the Union scored 2 goals on the night, and we should all be happy, but the Union definitely could have had multiple goals in this game. They could have won this game 4 or 5-0, in my opinion. You look at the chance that Mikael Uhre had, where he was 1-on-1 against Kalina. He takes a heavy touch, takes him out of the play. To his credit, he kept the ball in play and crossed it in to Corey Burke, who couldn't get in the end of the cross. But I think Uhre is probably feeling a little bit of pressure. He had 2 chances, 1-on-1s against Montreal, couldn't put it in the back of the net when he played. And now he makes his debut at home in front of the fans, where he got a great reception when he was introduced to the fans, the very first home game of the season against Minnesota. And then he gets a great reception. He gets a huge reception last night, making his home debut against Charlotte. And he's definitely feeling pressure to put the ball in the back of the net. There's a guy who wants to be playing every chance that he gets. We know that he's not been happy being injured because he wants to be out there. We know Jim Curtin's not happy that he's been injured because we know how talented this guy is. We've all seen his highlights. We know what Jim Curtin said about him. We've heard what Mikael thinks of his play style, how he thinks he's going to help this team. And we saw what he can do. A man down against Montreal. He had 2 chances, 1-on-1 against the goalkeeper, a man down. And so coming on at home where the Union have 11 men on the field, Charlotte are chasing this game, trying to get a goal back. There's going to be a lot of opportunities for him. And he got a perfect opportunity from Daniel Gazdag, just couldn't put the ball in the back of the net. I know Mikael played a good ball into Daniel Gazdag, who takes a couple touches and ultimately couldn't put the ball in the back of the net. But just to see that the chemistry between those guys already, it's great to see. And I'm sure we'll see Mikael hit the ball in the back of the net multiple times this season. I'm sure we'll see Mikael feeding Daniel Gazdag multiple times this season, just continuing Daniel Gazdag's hot start to the MLS season. And look, speaking of Daniel Gazdag, I mean, you can tell he's in terrific form right now. I mean, just the way that he's linking up with his teammates, just finding space, taking on players one-on-one, 4 straight games with a goal. This guy is definitely feeling himself right now, and it's just, man, I just go back to all the comments that people said last season, how Daniel Gazdag's a bum, how he's a bust. And yeah, there's people requiring on social media now. And, you do find it hard to not try to overhype this team right now, but I think we should all be proud with how the Union are playing right now, how they're off to the best start. How many times have you guys said this? The best start in team history. And I think it's something that fans should be proud of and something we should keep talking about. And through 5 games, the Union have a XG of 7.9, and they've scored 9 goals on the season. That means that they're scoring more goals than they're expected to score, which also means that they're creating a ton of chances. And like we said, the Union could have scored 4 or 5 goals in this game against Charlotte. They could have scored more goals against New York City. They could have scored more goals against Montreal. This team's creating a ton of chances, and you go ahead and look. I'll take it a step further. The Union, they have an XG of 1.9 per 90 minutes, which is almost on pace for 2 goals per game, which the Union, they're averaging 1.8 goals per game. And that XG per 90 minutes is only second in the league behind Columbus. And just again, I mean, this is the best team in Union history, and it's not even close. And, they have the right pieces in every single position. They have players that, look, you can make an argument that Corey Burke deserves to start. You can make an argument that Sergio Santos deserves to start every game. Julian, Carranza, Mikael Uhre. You can make an argument that Quinn Sullivan deserves to start. Paxton Aronson. And just having players in each position. I remember a few years ago where we were complaining about how we don't have any game changers off the bench. And now 3-4 years since that moment, we have multiple guys on the bench that can change a game, that you can make arguments that they should be starting. And, that's it's a great problem to have. And I'm happy that the Union have finally got players that are going to push each other every single day in practice, push each other in games. Okay, if you don't take a chance, then, the next man up. We saw what happened with Bizo. He lost his starting spot. And Nate Harriel's taking that spot from him. And, there's no way that Nate Harriel's losing that spot anytime soon. And, Bizo can have a terrific time in practice, but there's no way he's taking that spot unless Nate has like a terrible game or something. And speaking of Bizo, we saw before the game that the Union announced that Bizo was in COVID protocol, so hopefully everything works out and he'll be back on the bench next week for the Union against Columbus. Sergio Santos, as soon as he got subbed off, he was limping. He went straight to the locker room, and even after the game, he was all changed, came onto the field, he was limping. Jim Curtin said, hopefully it's just a cramp, nothing more, because his pace makes a difference. He's the fastest player on this team, and, having a player like Sergio Santos does make a difference, whether or not that's him starting or coming off the bench. He's going to tire out that back line, whether, like I said, whether he's starting or whether or not he's coming off the bench. And so hopefully it's nothing too serious for Sergio Santos, but on the flip side, we know we have 3 other strikers that can make a difference, that, can make an argument that they deserve to start every single game. But there are a couple points that I want to bring up before we talk about my review to the keys to victory, 3 stars, breaking down the goals, and blunder of the week. And you go ahead and look last night, the multiple throw-ins that the Union had from Nate Harriel, the throw-ins into the box. Sergio Santos was always the first player to get a flick one to that ball, which then we saw Daniel Gazdag, I think, get his head onto a flick one where Mikael Uhre was on the back post, and he was a little bit late. And if he could have got onto that flick one, this was in the second half, if he could have got onto that flick one, he could have had an easy goal right there. We saw in the first half multiple times Sergio Santos flicking on the ball and a little bit chaotic in the box for Charlotte to try to clear that ball out of the box. We saw it against New York City. We've seen it against Montreal. I mean, the Union, ever since they brought in Liverpool's throwing coach, they've gotten so much better on the throw-in, especially throwing in the ball for distance. And like Jim Curtin said, the team's always looking for ways to be ahead of the curve. So, if bringing in a throwing coach helps them, then so be it. We've seen the Union be dominant on set pieces because of Frank Leist. Jim Curtin talked about that. I played that clip for you guys a couple weeks ago. Again, during the week, he talked about, just giving credit to Phil Whedon, to Ryan Richter, to Frank for the work that they've been doing so far this season. I mean, Jim Curtin has a terrific coaching staff. I mean, you guys might get tired of me talking about it because I talked a lot last week about just the coaching staff, but yeah, those guys are something special, and there's a reason why Cincinnati came and took Pat Noonan, because he did a terrific job last season for the Union. The other point I want to bring up is Daniel Gazdag. I mean, he's 26 years old, and this team has a hard time keeping hold of number 10s, whether or not it's they don't work out or whether or not it's because they get sold. Let's say Daniel Gazdag continues this terrific form for the Union. What if Daniel Gazdag at the end of the season wins the MVP? Don't you guys think that teams in Europe are going to be calling for Daniel Gazdag's name, especially with him just constantly getting caught up to the Hungary national team, constantly playing for their national team, whether it's starting or coming off the bench? If Daniel Gazdag wins MVP, I think he'll have a lot of interest from teams in Europe. And yeah, it would suck to lose a player like Daniel Gazdag because he's a 10 that we've been lacking since Dashgal, in my opinion. With all his assists when he was with the Union in 2018. But now we're finally getting a 10 that can score goals. And I know that's what Marco Fabian was in 2019. He was scoring goals as a 10 when we really needed a 10 to create. But Daniel Gazdag's given us both. And hopefully he continues his fine form. And the player that I want to bring up is Carlos Paternina. Hopefully I'm saying that last name correct. Looks like it's how you say it. He's the 18-year-old that U2 brought in on loan from Colombia, which the Union have an option to buy. This guy's like really small, but watching him against FC Cincinnati 2 last week, he was so clever with the ball. He's so fast, like to turn in tight spaces with the ball. Not saying that this guy is definitely going to take over for Daniel Gazdag, because you guys are probably thinking, well, wouldn't Paxton Aronson take over for Daniel Gazdag? Yeah, I'm not sure how much longer Paxton Aronson's going to be on the Union. I think it's only a matter of time before the Union get a huge offer for Paxton Aronson, and I know it sounds crazy because he hasn't played as much as some Union fans would have hoped, but yeah, I mean, if Carlos Paternina continues to play well for U2, and I know it was only one game, but Ernst Tanner saw something in him. An 18-year-old from Colombia who, if he plays well, he'll definitely get into the first team. And so I think that signing for U2 was not only for U2, but it was also thinking ahead of the future for the Union. And I don't know how many Union fans really thought about that, but that's something that I thought about last night during the game, just watching Daniel Gazdag. I'm like, man, if this guy continues to play well, I just don't see how the Union keep hold of him. And I know we've said that the last couple of years for Kai Wagner, but yeah, I just encourage people to watch some U2 games. Watch Carlos Paternina. He's number 37, I believe it is. Get out to games. U2 was supposed to play today against Inter Miami, but that game got rescheduled for Tuesday, I believe it was. I haven't seen an updated time for that game, but yeah, I was really impressed with what he offered. The Union second team against FC Cincinnati scored the first goal in that game. Dude is just so shifty. He's so agile, and he's not the tallest guy. He's not the strongest build player, but only at 18 years old, he'll grow into his body, and the more and more that he plays in this system, I think there is a real opportunity for him in the future with the first team. And then the last thing I want to bring up before we talk about those keys and everything is, last week on Twitter, I don't know how many of you guys listening to the podcast follow on Twitter at Free Kick Pod, but ever since the Union's 2-0 loss last September to Club America, the Union were 11 wins, 5 draws, 2 losses. Well, they beat Charlotte, so they're 12 wins, 5 draws, 2 losses, and the only 2 losses were the 3-2 defeat to Minnesota, which Daniel Gazdag scored 2 goals in that game, and then New York City in the Eastern Conference Finals. Andre Blake had 7 clean sheets. Now he's up to 8 because of last night's clean sheet. The leading goal scorer in that stretch was Daniel Gazdag with 7, but now that's been updated to 8. The Union had 30 goals scored for. Now it's 32 goals for and 16 goals against. I mean, that's basically 2 goals compared to 1 goal given up every game. I mean, that's terrific for the Philadelphia Union, what they've been able to do during that stretch. And so during the week, I asked Jim Curtin, what do you think of that stretch ever since that game against Club America? Do you think that was a wake-up call for your team? What do you think that's done for Daniel Gazdag's confidence? And this is what Jim Curtin had to say.
Yeah, look, when you get to play in those types of games, similar to how I just described the experience those guys get in Argentina, it changes you. You feel a certain, I don't want to say more importance, but the higher the level of the game with the atmosphere that was in our stadium that night, those are the games you want to play in. And I think it would have been easy for us after the disappointment of getting knocked out in the semifinals of the Champions League, which is still a great accomplishment. It would have been easy for us to sink a little bit and have a letdown and lose games, but we went the opposite way. We took it as a moment to galvanize us, to recognize, yes, Club America was very good, but they're the best team on this continent at that time, and we played with them. So, overall, I think it was a confidence builder for us. And then, like you said, the numbers speak for themselves. We've gone on a really good run there. And within that, I think Daniel's gotten more acclimated to the group. He also had the rest of an offseason after a year where he played almost 60 games, when you count with us, with his games for his club in Hungary, with the Hungary national team. It was over 60 games in the calendar year, which is going to wear on a player. So he's more used to the league. He's more acclimated to it. His teammates love him in the locker room. He's a great kid. I've converted him into a pretty big Sixers fan, which is nice too. So overall, I think all those things, the comfort level rises, and now he's, in really good form. And it's our job to keep putting him on the ball because he's a guy that makes the special plays around the goal.
Yeah, and the Union continue to get Daniel Gazdag involved around the goal. And, I mean, yeah, it sucks. It sucked when we got knocked out to Club America, but like that moment there really did spark something special into the Union. And to only lose 2 games in 17 games played, I mean, that's a terrific run. And I don't see anybody in MLS talking about this. And like I said at the beginning, it's fine. We don't need people around MLS talking about the run that the Union have been on. But it is nice to see Jim Curtin acknowledge that run, to see him talk about just how comfortable Daniel Gazdag is now with Union, how well he's been playing for the team, and just hopefully that the Union continue the strong run. And before we know it, maybe Champions League is going to be in the Union's future. But let's go ahead and talk about the keys to the game that I had for this game against Charlotte. Number one, I said the press has to be on time. That is 100% a pass, in my opinion. First 15, 20 minutes of this game, the Union kept Charlotte just pinned down in the first half. The Union get that early goal, and I don't think Charlotte were anticipating, being pinned down as much as they were pinned down in this game, especially in that first, like I said, 15, 20 minutes of this game. And I know in the second half, Charlotte really had to go for it. They had so much more possession of the ball. But, I mean, even from, like, the first 15, 20 minutes of this game, the Union were not making it easy for Charlotte. You saw a lot of back passes, a lot of passing going from side to side from Charlotte because they couldn't go through the middle. The Union were always stepping as soon as they try to go in the middle. There was a defender, there was a midfielder right there on the back of a Charlotte player. And so the Charlotte had no answer for how to break down the Union. And you saw at the second half, they tried to go with 2 up top, which I was a little bit surprised that they didn't start the game with 2 up top. And they concede a goal within the first minute of the second half. And now there goes everything that Charlotte probably talked about in the halftime. And yeah, I mean, just you love to see it. And again, I go back to just what those Charlotte fans were saying, expecting to come into Subaru Park and absolutely dominate the Union. And it was anything but that. Number 2, I said you got to limit Karol Swiderski's chances outside the box. Again, 100% pass. Swiderski, he had 32 touches, 0 shots, zero shots on target. He dropped extremely deep to even get on the ball. I mean, if you look at his heat map, most of his touches came at the halfway line, at the halfway circle. And that was probably, like, I'm not even joking, like, most of those touches, I feel like, were as soon as Charlotte was kicking off the ball. I mean, the Union absolutely took him out of the game with Jose Martinez doing a fantastic job just all night knowing where Carroll was going to be. And you saw his body language. He was upset. I mean, he was shrugging. He was yelling at his teammates. And that's what happens when you come into Subaru Park. They don't make it easy, the Union. And number 3, I said you got to utilize your speed against Charlotte center backs. Again, 100% a pass. Kaz passed to Sergio Santos to get him behind. Sergio's assist to Julian Carranza. Mikhail Ua was 1-on-1 versus Kalina thanks to a Daniel Gazdag pass. The Union, that's the way they're going to play all season long. They're going to use the speed of Sergio Santos, the speed of Mikhail Ua, and just stretch teams' back lines. And then you'll see the runs in behind from Julian Carranza, from Daniel Gazdag, from Ali Bedoya. And it's just crazy to me. Teams know how the Union want to play, and they don't have an answer for that. And I'm definitely not complaining. But let's go ahead and talk about my 3 starts for the game. So number 3 on my list is Julian Carranza. And yeah, it's tough to say Julian's number 3 on the night because he got the goal, the game-winning goal. He was 14 for 19 on passes, 75% completed passes, 2 for 2 for shots and shots on target, 1 for 1 on dribbles. He was only dispossessed 1 time, 2 for 2 tackles, 5 for 8 ground duels won. He had 2 fouls drawn for the Union. And it does, right? You guys know that I'm a big supporter of Casper, but Julian Carranza is a huge upgrade over Casper, especially the work that Julian does off the ball defensively. Looking at his dribbles, taking on players one-on-one. Casper was slow. He was clumsy, and his touch wasn't the best. Even look, the first play of the night that the Union had, long ball to Julian Carranza. Julian Carranza chests the ball down at the top of the box and lays it off, I forget who, maybe to Daniel Gazdag or something. But how many times have we seen Casper just get the ball to feet and he takes a terrible touch, and we're like, oh, we have terrible strikers. Their touches suck. Corey Burr, Casper Shabelko. Corey's touch seems to have gotten better this season, but I've yet to see Julian Carranza take a bad touch this season, and to actually see a striker link up well with his teammates to play good passes, 2 assists this season for the Union. So happy that the Union have a player like Julian Carranza on their team. Number 2, Nate Harriel. 1 for 3 on tackles, 1 block, 2 headed clearances, 3 interceptions, 2 ball recoveries, 2 for 3 aerial duels won, 3 out of 4 ground duels won. I mean, Nate's not losing that right back spot. It doesn't matter what I say anymore. I mean, you guys know how well Nate Harriel plays. What else do I need to say about Nate Harriel? I mean, ever since his first game this season, I mean, these are just the typical performances for him. You know he's going to be good in the air. You know that he's going to be right on the attacker's back, intercepting the ball, starting that counterattack. I mean, the only thing I guess you can complain about is I think he was 0 for 2, 0 for 3 on crosses, but defensively, he's sound, and it's so rare to get that from a fullback. And then number 1 was Jose Martinez. 82 touches on the night, 47 out of 56 completed passes, which was good for 84%. He was 9 for 11 on long balls, 6 out of 10 for duels won, 2 out of 3 tackles won, 1 interception, 8 ball recoveries. Everything starts with Jose Martinez, and that was no different last night. And just to watch him dominate in the midfield, to start the attacks, to be so comfortable on the ball, to make it so difficult for Charlotte. And Jim Curtin had a lot to say. I don't want to just repeat what Jim Curtin had to say. I want you guys to hear what Jim Curtin had to say. But yeah, I mean, it's nothing but great things that Jim had to say after the game about Jose Martinez.
They played a unique formation, one that we weren't anticipating. It was almost looked like a 3-6-1 in the first half. So we had 6 versus 4 in the midfield, and our midfielders I thought worked tirelessly. Jose Martinez, for my money, and I think for anyone who actually watches our league, is the best number 6 in our league, and it's not close anymore. Doesn't get the accolades or credit that he deserves, but can just kind of control a game by himself. All the ball winning is off the charts, and and that statistical, data of just what you want out of a defensive midfielder. But then if you look at his passes tonight, just the switches of play that he made look so easy, the ball's clipped over and behind that set up chances. So really incredible performance from him, coming back from being a little bit fatigued and tired and picked up knocks with his national team, but stepped on the field tonight and was a warrior for us. So
Yeah, nothing but great things to say about Jose Martinez. And look, you guys heard a couple weeks ago on the podcast, Jordan Floyd come on, and he has no ties to the Union. He didn't have to say anything nice about the Union. He said that, it used to be people said around MLS that, oh, find me the next Diego Char. But now people around MLS circles are saying, find me the next Jose Martinez, because he has been that great of a player since he has stepped foot in a Union uniform. And the one thing that, I'll keep talking about it is, and the one thing that Harris Manunion added to the Union was his passing ability to play a long ball over the top to start the attack for the Union. Jose Martinez has added that and then some. And to see what he does defensively, I mean, we all know every single game what we're going to get defensively from Jose Martinez. But to have 82 touches, he had the most touches of any player last night for the Union. He was the focal point of the attack. Let's get Jose on the ball. He'll find the right pass, and our attacks are going to start through Jose Martinez. And, it's been that way for a while now, and this guy just continues to get better. He looks to be one of the best players on the Union's team. I know Jim Curtin said he's the best number 6 for his money in the league. I know Portland fans would want to have something to say about that with Diego Char, but yeah, Jose Martinez. Again, guys, we talk about Kai Wagner, surprised that he's still here. Jose Martinez, definitely surprised that he's still here. And I know there were rumors last season that there was teams in Russia interested in him. I definitely don't think he'll be going to Russia anytime soon. There will definitely be teams around MLS that will be saying, give me the next Jose Martinez. There will be teams in Europe saying, who is this guy? Let's sign him, because he's so good defensively and he's gotten so much better offensively too. So those are my 3 star players of the game for the Union. And let's go ahead and break down the goals. I mean, there's not much to break down, right? So really the only reason I'm breaking down these goals is because I want to play Julian Carranza and Kai Wagner's thoughts after the game. So the first goal that the Union get is thanks to Julian Carranza. It's a long ball over the top from Kai Wagner. It's so funny too. It's when you look at it, Charlotte were playing with 3 in the back, like Jim said. They had 2 center backs. They had 2 center backs on this play on Sergio Santos. And Kai Wagner plays an excellent ball to split both of these guys. Sergio Santos knows exactly where the ball is going to bounce. He's just behind the ball, so he's able to take a touch, great touch into the box. As soon as he lets the ball stop bouncing a couple times in the box, great one-time pass to Julian Carranza. The pass is a little bit behind Julian Carranza, who Carranza does a good job just to hold off Christian Fuchs and hit this ball past Christian Kalina with a left-footed finish. And you saw on the big screen, or you watch this game on TV, just the huge smile that Julian Carranza had to finally get that off his back, his first goal for the Union. I mean, just a huge relief. But we see this play at least once a game, just from Kai Wagner out of the back, splits at least one defender, splits 2 against Charlotte. Sergio Santos is able to just let the ball bounce, take a good touch in the box, and hit a good one-time finish to Julian Carranza, who does a great job to just pick out where he's going to place this ball in the back of the net, and it was a great finish to beat Kalina. Number 2 on this was Daniel Gazdag, and again, not much to break down for this play by Daniel Gazdag. Just a really, really huge blunder, which I'm not even going to play the blunder sound. That's going to be blunder of the week. And I know a lot of you guys had fun this week on Twitter when the World Cup draw was drawn and England drew with the USA, and some of you guys were giving me stick on social media, which, it's all fun and games, right? Because if you guys are new, England's my number one team, yes, ahead of the United States. And if you guys are new, you guys don't know why I choose England over the United States. It's because 2006, the very first soccer game that I watched, where England were taking on Portugal. England lose to Portugal in the World Cup in penalties. The commentators kept talking about Manchester United because England had a ton of Manchester United players on the team. And so, because the commentators kept saying that, that's how I became a Manchester United fan. That's how I became an England fan because, England is what introduced me to soccer. And yeah, it does make it very awkward that, there's probably going to be 2 Union players on the USA's roster. And so I guess when England plays the USA, hopefully a draw, because it doesn't matter who the Union players play for, whether it's their national teams or if they get sold, it doesn't matter. I always want to see former Union players, current Union players play well for their national teams, play well for their club teams. And it's going to be hard to cheer against Brendan Aronson and Mark McKenzie when England takes on the USA. So, when the USA isn't playing England, yeah, I'll cheer for the USA. But, I guess for my sake, hopefully a draw and both of those teams make it out of the group stage. And I'm sure even up after that point, I'm sure, the next couple months, more and more you guys will start tagging me on social media, busting my balls about being a fan of the England national team. And, it's all fun and games, right? But let's go ahead and talk about this goal that Daniel Gazdag scored. So Charlotte tried to play out of the back. It starts with our goalkeeper, Christian Kalina. Christian Kalina passes it to one of their midfielders. He's able to beat the press of Sergio Santos, which then I don't know why. I think it's probably because the Union just kept pressuring on Charlotte's back line, so they couldn't play through the middle. So they just kept rotating the ball backwards. Like I said, a ton of backward passes from Charlotte in this game. So Charlotte again just pass it out to the right. They recycle it again to Kalina. Kalina takes a good touch, right? Sergio Santos and Julian Carranza put a ton of pressure on Kalina right here, and it forces the mistake to Daniel Gazdag, who steps in front of the intended pass and has a wide open net. And a huge credit to Sergio Santos and Julian Carranza. Like I said earlier, their work rate that they had throughout this game was unbelievable, and because of their work rate, Daniel Gazdag was able to get a tap in. So, there's not much to break down in either one of those goals. Super duper simple. But like I said, the reason I wanted to break down those goals was to play what Julian Carranza and Kai Wagner had to say after the game. So this is what Julian Carranza had to say about getting his first goal for the Union and just how he's fitting in with the team.
I feel so good with this team. We are working so hard to get the wins. Honestly, I just working hard for the team to be highest possible in the league, And then I knew that the goal was coming because I was working hard for the team. And then I think in my mind that's first, work hard for the team, and then the things are gonna come soon. So I'm so happy for scoring my first goal here, and then I hope it's the first of many.
Yeah, I think my big key takeaway from that is he said no, not scoring goals isn't his number one job for the Union. It is to work hard for the team defensively. And yeah, that's what Julian's been doing ever since he's got into the starting 11 for the Union. And Matt Doyle from MLSsoccer.com said when Twitter once Julian Carranza scored that goal, he said, what if the best DP signing that into Miami had was Julian Carranza all along? Yeah, it might very well be. But you look at that Miami team, I know there's a lot of talk because Julian Carranza only has 3 MLS goals. Now he has 4. But that was just a horrible team to be a part of down in Miami where they weren't creating chances for him. And they were paying Gonzalo Higuain a ton of money. And, they decided to start Higuain over Julian Carranza. And we'll take him. And he's looked a completely different player from down in Miami to what he is now. And even if he doesn't score a ton of goals for the Union, just what he does off the ball. I read you his stats against Charlotte in this game. He's done a fantastic job for the Union this season. And yeah, I hope, sooner rather than later, we hear the Union take up that option to buy Julian Carranza. And hopefully he's here for a very long time. And Kai Wagner then was asked in this game about his pass over the top to Sergio Santos, his chemistry with Sergio Santos, and this is what Kai had to say.
We saw it, I think, in the last games already too, that we know that Sergio has a great speed, that he's doing, the runs now really good. Probably last season or the seasons before, he always, was more in the offside position, but now his timing is, really, really good. And he knows that, when I just look up once, he knows that he will get the ball, because I always talk with him, play on the left side, not on the right side. Because he fits so well in my system, how I want to play, really fast forward and everything. So I was just looking up. I know that I have a really good left foot, and found just a space. I think they slept a little bit on it, so I just was trying to hit the ball over. It was probably a perfect ball. You can't play it better. But then it was just the execution from Sergio and Julian, how they worked together to score this goal. And now we're just really happy about the partnership, what probably not just Sergio and Julian have, also me with Sergio and me with Julian too.
I don't know. I don't know how some fans feel about that. Maybe they feel like Kai Wagner is a little bit too cocky, saying, yeah, you couldn't have played a better ball. I have a great left foot. He believes in himself, and I don't see anything wrong with that. He's right. You couldn't have played a better ball under Sergio Santos and behind. Kai Wagner has a great left foot. He's the best left back in the league. And if we do lose him in the summertime, Matt Real or Leon Flock or whoever, Anton Sorensen, it's going to be a tough position for them to pick up what Kai Wagner leaves behind. So hopefully this run that the Union have on, hopefully Kai Wagner can be here throughout the summertime and he can reap the benefits of lifting the Supporters Shield, the MLS Cup, the US Open Cup, because I feel a lot of confidence in this team that they could potentially win all three of those trophies this season. And just hopefully we don't lose anybody this summer, and hopefully this team just continues to get better. And like Kai said, we play this ball all the time. In Charlotte, we're sleeping on this play. And for whatever reason, teams in MLS, like I said, the Union play this ball at least once a game, and teams cannot stop this. And, that's a credit to Sergio Santos' pace. It's tough for center backs to catch up to Sergio Santos. And when Kai Wagner doesn't get pressured and he can just pinpoint exactly where he wants to play that ball, hit it with pace, with placement, doesn't get any easier than that. But, yeah, great game for the Philadelphia Union to beat Charlotte 2-0, to have 4 straight wins, to sit on top of the Eastern Conference. But if you guys aren't following the podcast on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook, follow @FreeKickPod, where we get your podcast, The Free Kick. And yeah, hopefully the Union can get good news this week when Sergio Santos on Ali Bedoya. Hopefully both of those guys will be available against Columbus. Hopefully the Union can continue this hot start that they continue to be on for the 2022 MLS season. But until then, my name is Todd, and this is the Free Kick Podcast.